All right, welcome everybody to the second season of From Here to There, where we bring in people who are there and you're here, and we try to talk about the gap between here and there. That's the idea. So today, our guest is Devyn Goss, and I know Devyn personally from, well, your husband helped me get a car, or fix my car at one point, and my daughter was in your fashion show, which is fantastic, and there was one other way that I know you that I'm not going to talk about just yet.
Okay.
Okay, so my first question to you, Devyn, is we kind of celebrate the uniqueness of everybody here. I mean, every one of these students is earning a business degree.
Yeah, that's awesome.
For different purposes and reasons, and lots of them like some classes and not others, and then others like the other classes and not these, and so everybody's kind of different. And you're a person that I think is unique in a lot of ways. So let me ask you this.
I can't tell if he's roasting me or not.
How would your husband describe you?
Oh my gosh. That's a really hard question. My husband is like a saint. He's like quiet and thoughtful and super polite. And I would like to think that I have some of those qualities, but I think that I'm kind of his opposite. And so I'm loud, maybe obnoxious, creative. And so I think you're feeling me in the back. I appreciate you. All right. Thank you. I'm going to just zoom in on you then. So I think that he would probably use words like outgoing. He would probably use polite words, but I feel like I know what I'm about. You know what I mean? I had to pluck a gray eyebrow this morning, so I feel like at this stage in my life, I sort of know what I am. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, I think that he thinks I'm a little nuts probably sometimes.
Okay, and it's okay to be a little nuts.
It's celebrated in my house.
Yeah. Very good.
Yeah.
So is your husband a risk taker? And
no.
How would you compare yourself as a risk taker to your husband?
Yeah, like I'm off the cliff and he's still thinking about the best way up the mountain. Okay, I would say we're like polar opposites that way. Yeah.
He's on mainland all the time.
My husband is like on the straight and narrow and I'm not.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so when you were in college, when you were right around in your early 20s and things, were you the same person then as you are now?
Mm-mm.
Okay, what's the difference?
No. I think probably the difference, I mean, I've always been a little nutty. I think God just makes some of us wired a little different. And so I think I've always had a little bit of that. But I think I had our daughter at a very young age. So I was 19. So I had to navigate different waters than I think a lot of people my age at the time had to. And so college, jobs, everything was just about like survival. And so I think that that made me a little gritty. And I think now I just appreciate more the hustle, I think, because I had to do it from a different kind of perspective at the time. I met my husband when our daughter was 4. We were married 2 years later, and then he adopted her 2 years later. And so, our little trio is just super tight, I would say. And so I think that the difference now is just that I've gone through that really hard, gritty, like, how am I going to pay my rent? You know, what's going to happen? How is she going to perceive me as a mom, as a worker, as a kid trying to get through college? And so now at this stage in my life, I can kind of look back and go, geez, like that was really kind of an uphill battle that I just have a lot of gratitude for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, but at that time when you were asking those questions, how am I going to pay rent? What's going to happen like tomorrow that could knock me off on my heels a little bit more?
Yeah.
How did you make decisions in that environment? I mean, because a lot of us shut down in that environment. How did you react in that kind of a place in your life?
Yeah. I mean, I'd like to think maybe different, but I really just think at the time, like when you have to make a decision. Like there's not the luxury of planning things out. You just make fast decisions and you hope that they're the best decision at the time. And sometimes they are and sometimes they're not. But I had a mentor in business tell me any decision is a good decision if you just make it when it needs to be made, because people hate indecision, and that's such a bad place to be. And so I just don't think I had the luxury of making grandiose plans. I think I just had to act. So whether that was like picking up a second job, which I did, leaning on my family, they were wildly supportive, and that was a really cool advantage that I think a lot of people don't have in that same situation. And so I think, yeah, I guess that's it. I felt at the time like I just had to get where I was going because I didn't want her to make the same mistakes that I had made. So it was just really important to me to show her that you can work, you can go to school, you can get back on the road that God initially wanted you to go down, and just how real grace is. And so I just think that's sort of how we carved out our life together.
Yeah. So what I hear you talking about is you didn't have the luxury necessarily to hem and haw over decisions. You just took action. And you were always kind of about making decisions, taking action. And then some of those decisions probably weren't perfect.
No. A lot of them weren't. Like, I'm not the brightest crayon in the box, but I'll out-hustle anybody in the room. Kind of a mentality, I think, is like what you have to do. And so when you kind of wrap your head around that it's very cliche, but when people tell you, like, there's no substitute for hard work, there's just no substitute for hard work. Like, you can just put your head down and get a job done and find a way to make something happen.
You know, I heard or read something recently. It was a news article just kind of talking about that topic, where the most successful business people in America today, the top paid CEOs, they're not the most intelligent people in their company. They've worked really hard.
Yeah.
You don't have to. This is going to go badly.
Yeah. I hope it does, because I'm ready for you. Yeah. Okay.
But I think sometimes we have so much anxiety about being a genius. You know, I have to be a genius to be successful. I have to be brilliant to be really successful. And those people who are really successful, they're brilliant, and I'm not, so therefore I can't cross that chasm. I think that's false.
Yeah.
Right? And I think the statistics kind of prove that. You work hard, you put your head down, and you take action, I think a lot of good things can happen.
Yeah, I agree.
So getting back to some of your background stuff, what was your work life like, or what did your profession look like at the start of your professional career after college and in your 20s and stuff?
So I started selling advertisement for the newspaper, which I know probably nobody in this room has picked up a newspaper recently. And then, we got one hand here in the front, and you're young too, so good for you, sis. But then I graduated to an even now more archaic medium, which was the Yellow Pages. And so I just kept finding a way to stay inside of advertising, mostly focused on helping small and medium-sized businesses. So I loved that. And in my mind, I loved it for all the right reasons, because when you came up with a really creative campaign that actually made that person's phone ring, there's no better feeling on earth like that, because a small, medium business, that means they're paying their rent, they're paying their mortgage, they're feeding their kids. So that was really rewarding for me for a lot of years. And then I just sort of climbed up and eventually landed in a leadership position inside that company and was there for a really long time. And then I don't know if you want me to jump into.
Let's go.
Okay.
You made a decision.
I made a decision. I did. So I made a decision after what I thought was a lot of thought, not what my husband, the non-risk taker, would have done. He probably had thought about this for a very long time, but me, it's like I had what I think is an epiphany in the middle of the night, and my husband was actually gone, so I woke our, at the time, I guess she was 14-year-old daughter up, or 13, or however, not old enough to wake up when I woke her up, and I said, I have an amazing idea and I need somebody to listen to me. And so she,
It was your 13-year-old.
begrudgingly, so it was Mads, poor thing.
Because your husband wasn't going to do it.
No, well, by God's good grace, he was on a fishing trip.
Oh, okay.
So then by the time he came home, like I had her riled up and she was like ready to go into action with me on this business plan. And so I decided that I wanted to open, I called it the Pink Clambulance. And, my baby, I loved her. Isn't she cute? And so kind of like a food truck, but for fashion. So it was, we redid the inside of actually an old ambulance. And so we like gutted the floors, and I had like wood floors and a chandelier. It was fancy, y'all. It was so pretty. And I took it around to like festivals, and I would just drive up to people's places of work during lunch, and I'd be like, do you girls want to come out and shop? Because women, that work like a typical 8 to 5, they had a hard time like on the nights or weekends. And so in my mind, it was like the greatest idea on earth. And I loved it very much. We did have like a nonprofit sort of side to it. And I could get into this later because I really learned the most about it. Failed. I don't run it today. I just want to call that out right now. But I really learned the most about myself and about business by it failing. And so we can maybe talk about that in a minute. But I also had the nonprofit side to it. So every Monday, me and a team of local girls that were either some type of cosmetologist, beautician, massage therapist, we would go and provide free in-home makeovers to people that were sick. So if you had cancer, if you were depressed, we did every gamut in between. And that for me was like the best part of the whole bus. I loved it so much. So that kind of in a nutshell is the Clambulance.
Okay, so let me say something for you to react to.
Yeah.
If it causes a reaction or not. But how long did you run the Pink Clambulance?
Almost 2 years.
2 years. So you had a business of your own, created from yourself, from your brain. It's not like it was handed to you. You just created it out of nothing, ran it for 2 years, and then decided to do something else for whatever. Why is that failure? What if we say that's not failure?
True.
The business didn't fail. It ran for 2 years.
It did.
And then it stopped. And at that point, you went into something else.
Yeah. And I guess you're right. And I guess I should look at that. I think it's still so emotional for me because it was my baby, I felt like. And I wanted to have a business of my own for a long time. And I got tired of like working for the corporate man, which by the way, there's nothing wrong with working for a lot of you are going to do that, and that will pay your bills and you will have a very happy life. But in that moment, I thought, I'm done with that corporate man. And so I'm going to open this bus. And so I will say that she's still running today in Florida. These two crazier ladies than me came and they paid some guy from Canada to like drive it across the country. And my husband, who is an auto mechanic, was like, you cannot sell them that. They cannot drive this thing across the country. I'm like, dude, if they hand me the check, I'm out. Let's get real about it right now. And so anyways, so they're still running it today in Florida. So I guess from like a failed perspective, I just had bigger dreams, I guess, for it at the time. And I think probably the reason I feel like it failed is if I would have started a nonprofit, if I would have been in a position in my life where that would have been feasible for me, I think I'd be in here talking to you guys about somebody's, nails I just painted or something like that. And so that I think is where it got tricky for me is I couldn't manage having my heart's desire really be to have it as a nonprofit and then needing to have it be like a functional retail store, if that makes sense. So I think I should have probably made a decision to go one way or the other. Yeah, do you have a question?
Yeah, okay. So I'm wondering how do you, since you said it's in the middle of the night, how did you go about starting it the next day?
Yeah, that's a great question.
This was in your driveway the next morning, wasn't it?
Pretty much. I mean, it was fast. I got on Craigslist and started looking for old vans. And again, this is really where my husband's expertise came in, because when I broke the news to him, he's like, well, you got to have a this year or this brand or this what. And I'm like, just find it then. I'm the big picture, right? You're the details. And so at least that's how I felt. And so we kind of went down that road. But I started making lists, like who was my customer going to be? What did they look like? Where would I go? How much would I spend on events? What kind of events would make sense? Who's in my network? That's something that I would tell you is, especially getting some type of a business degree, the value of your network, it's like you can't even probably put your head around right now how important it is. My husband has been an auto mechanic his whole life, and right here in Redlands locally. At age 17, I think, he started working at what's now Spreen Honda, but it was Saturn of Loma Linda, right? And he worked there for a million years. And so his auto network is rock solid and strong. I had no network inside of this that really made it make sense. In my professional career, I'd worked with a lot of like electricians and plumbers and like local businesses with their advertising. And even though those guys were like supportive and like cheering from me from a human perspective, they weren't my customer. And so I think as you get into business, the people that you keep around you in your business network, it's just so critical to your personal success. When you have people that can say, hey, I know this person, you should take the bus here, or I know this guy and he could hook you up this way. I just think as you get into business, so I wish I would have spent more time figuring out who my best network would be, but I think I just really was like, I was moving faster, I think, than the rest of me could move. My brain was, at least. So I think it's about list making and just figuring out like, where are you gonna go with it? Like, let's say you get a bus and you fill it up with stuff. Like, are you just gonna roll down the street and open the back and be like, who wants a tank top, right? But P.S., that's kind of what I did. I mean, I just went places until they'd either kick me out. Like the Krikorian in Redlands, before it, changed, I would like park in their parking lot on like a Friday afternoon and wait for the security guy to be like, are you supposed to be here? And I'd be like, I don't know. Are you cool with it? And so I took some liberties and well, I don't know if it's good to brag about, but I did take some liberties and stuff and nothing that was too crazy or that would have got me in trouble. But so yeah, I think I just rambled, but I don't even know if that kind of answered your question. But I think I started making lists and trying to figure out who's my girl, who's my end user, who's my customer.
It's a good question. Just in finishing up, we've got maybe 1 or 2 minutes before you got to get back to class. Any other questions for Devyn?
Yeah.
Is that business still running, you said?
In Florida, yeah.
What did they do different that you couldn't do? How does it?
That's a great question.
You couldn't keep it running, but what did they do
Yeah.
different?
Well, I will say this, they're both retired. So I just will probably make a financial assumption that they don't have my same bills. I don't know if that's right or not, but my daughter just started college down in San Diego 3 weeks ago. So, and just my mortgage and everything else. So I would just probably assume that from a financial perspective, if I was a few years later in my life and didn't need the amount of income that I need to make my life run, that's probably just the honest truth. Yeah.
So in closing, let me ask you, with this room full of college students who are earning a business degree, some of them have dreams of starting their own business.
Yeah.
Like they have the middle of the night idea experience just like you did. Some of them have the dream of working for a corporation and climbing the ladder.
Yeah.
Some of them have the dream of working for a church or a nonprofit. What advice would you give, and thinking of your daughter, what advice do you give them about life and about business that you've learned so far in your experience?
That's a great question. So I want to say two things. The first thing that I want to say just is that it's legitimately for me an honor to be here. And I say that because I tell my daughter all the time, hey, freshmen, are there any freshmen in here? Sophomores-ish? Okay, so there's a handful of you. Like, and seniors through there. You guys, I am so hopeful and excited for your guys' generation because you're going to change the world, like, period. And that's not like a Tumblr post, and that's not, that's real life. Like, you guys are a colorblind, free-loving generation, and I am just so happy and excited for what you guys are going to do. So leading into really answering the question, try all of it. Don't be afraid to fail. You learn the most about yourself, about the people around you, about your village, about where you really want to go when you try something and it doesn't work out the way you want it to. You can call it failure, you can call it whatever you want, but just don't be afraid of that. Try everything, especially when you're young, because your risk really is low, right? You're going to recover. You're not going to get yourself into that much trouble because really nobody's going to let you get into that much trouble when you're young. And I would just say, just work harder than the next guy. Right? There was no magic to me always getting promoted or getting that next job or getting the bigger office or getting more members on my team. other than I think two things. I hustle. I will out-hustle anybody that's next to me because number one, I'm a little bit competitive and or a lot of bit competitive. And number two, I just really have a satisfaction of like a job well done. And I would say the second thing you can do that is always going to get you far in any of those streams is you have to sincerely care about the people around you. Like being kind is one thing, but having a level of sincerity and like really caring about the people around you will also help you get where you want to go. So try everything, be kind, and know that you guys are totally the generation that's going to shake things up. I would say that's it. Yeah, thank you, Mark. Thank you for having me.